Because we often internalize these expectations, and then it's no longer exclusively an external expectation. Then we ourselves expect us to live a certain way, to behave a certain way. And then we think almost that this is how we are, and we're just broken because we can't fulfill these expectations. I want to talk about expectations and how they often prevent us from living the life we actually want to live. Sometimes they internally, the expectations we have ourselves for our life, for what we want to do. And other times they're external, from society, from our parents, from friends. And there's a big overlap there too. And I want to give you a small example that is very simple from my own life, but explains it really well, I think. And then it kind of get to why that happens, why I think that happens, and what you can do about it. How can you still overcome that? Let's start with the small example. I try to do right now my creative work. I set that up in a way that I don't really have a boss. I have a client, but there are no opening hours. It's not a physical shop. I don't have to clock in. I just have, something has to be done at a certain point, but that is sometimes weeks from now. How do I do it? How do I structure my day? Badly, but I'm getting better. Let me explain that a little bit better. We all learn externally that if we get up early and we get everything done before lunch, that is the gold standard. That is how we do this. Everything hard has to be done in the first half of the day, because then our brain is the freshest. Then we can tackle big problems the best. And then also the hardest part is behind us and we can enjoy a little bit better. And I believe, there are people that worked for them. It's good for them. That's how they operate. In my example, that was my dad. He found that out for himself like that. It works. He does that. But he also assumed in a way okay, it works for absolutely everybody. And he tried all the time to make me do it. I struggled a lot. We fought a lot about that. There were times where really we couldn't get along because it was not working out. And that still is instilled in me. So for the longest time, I tried to start my workday at 8 or 9 a.m. at the very latest, and then get to work, be creative, on command, basically. And that didn't work. I was just, I was sitting here or with my laptop somewhere and nothing happened. And I couldn't understand why. Why is that? I wake up at 6:30 with my wife, so we see each other, have breakfast, and then I was sitting there, wasting time. Now I understand, and I switched. I understand my brain is not like that. My brain does not tackle the hardest parts of the work, the hardest things it can do in the first half of the day. It's exactly the opposite. My brain is I don't want to do this shit right now. Give me something small so I can get into the groove. And that's what I do now. I wake up at 6:30, just be for half an hour and try not to die. Have a coffee, ease into the day, maybe take a walk, then I clean, do some chores. That does not require my brain. My body is doing something. My brain still booting, basically. And then after that, I take a shower, and then I can actually do work that requires my brain. And that is around 11 a.m., 11:30 sometimes. And society that goes against what we all learned from society, from the external expectations. Externally, that means I'm lazy. What do I do? Like not work, like everybody almost is in the lunch break and I just start. But so what? What does that mean? I still get everything done I have to be doing for the client. I get everything done I want to do for myself, for YouTube. I already did sports sometimes, so that's something. And I did chores. Like, it's not that I just did nothing. And even if you just sleep longer and wake up at 11 and then do everything you want to do, everything you have to do and get it done, so what? Who cares? It's not that easy though. Because we often internalize these expectations, and then it's no longer exclusively an external expectation. Then we ourselves expect us to live a certain way, to behave a certain way. And then we think almost that this is how we are, and we're just broken because we can't fulfill these expectations. But I think it is a learning process, but when you really look behind the curtain or try to look for the why is that an expectation? What does that actually do? Over time, you will find out there's nothing behind it. Nothing against people that work perfectly fine in the first half of the day. Cool, great. But the problem begins when you start to try make other people do what works for yourself, because we are all different, all of us. Our brains don't work exactly the same. So we have to find something that works for us. And that sometimes goes against the expectations. But you have to think for yourself, like, do you want to fulfill expectations that you maybe have internally, but all of your internal expectations you have come from an external point. So in the end, do you want other people dictate how you live your life? And I think most of us would say no. And I would really recommend you to say, no, I don't want that. I don't want that, because that's not something that makes you happy. I can't believe I looking back at some point and really happy, thinking like, thank God I always try to fulfill other people's expectations and let that dictate how I live my life. Thank God I stayed at the same spot forever because that's what people expected me to do. No. But what to do? What can you do? I think you have to really think about the why. Like, why is that? Why do people say that? Why do people have expectations for you? Or you, and then in the end, you yourself. I think often most of the time, I would say it comes from like a positive place. It comes from something they did that either worked for them or they saw other people succeed with that method. I can't speak English right now. And they want you to succeed. That is definitely the case with my dad. Like, he struggled a lot in his youth, in his life, and he didn't want me to struggle the same. So he just applied what worked for him on me. And, if you understand that first part, I think it becomes easier to work with it, to understand and then find a way for yourself and without letting the other person down. Because often we try to follow these expectations because we like the person it comes from. We don't want to let that person down. But when you understand it comes from love, and you understand the why a little bit better, you also understand, okay, there's another why for you. For me, that was the realization of my brain works very differently than the brain of my dad. And then the next step of that is, okay, what does the work for my brain? And you think back. And for me, that was I procrastinated everything forever. I still struggle with that. The thing is that worked. It's not healthy, it's not a good thing, but it worked. I always waited for the last second and then worked late at night or whatever, That's not healthy. I don't want you to do that. But what I take from that is, well, I need pressure. That was before I found out I even have ADHD, that's another thing, but I need this pressure. And then you need to find a way how to create that, and also I realized I can't do that in the morning, no matter how tight the deadline was. I was not doing it in the morning. I was doing it at night. And that, I connected the dots and I'm like, okay, well, here now with the creative business I'm trying to create and with the first client I have, I start working at 11:30, 12. And I realized that, no matter what I try to plan, it always comes down to that I start at this time. So why not already plan with that and use the time before that, the 4 hours, sometimes 5 hours I'm awake before I actually start working. Use this time. Before I was wasting it away because I was not doing anything. I was not enjoying myself. I was not productive. But by switching that, by planning to actually start at 11, consciously working with my brain, I realized, okay, I can do something physical before that. And that over time made me more happy. I'm way more happy now, way more content. And that is the thing. You have to find something that works for your brain, that works for you. There are sometimes, obviously, things you have to do at a certain amount of time or at a certain hour. If you have to be somewhere at a certain time for work, for a business, for whatever, then you can't change that. That's decided for you. Then you have to make the best out of it. And, that it will still work. But if you have the freedom of choosing when to do something, how to work, if you are also in a creative job and you get an idea, work on that, that don't say no, but it's now whatever, evening, night, whatever. If that works for you, make it work. Don't work against it. I think that's the best solution I can give you right now. I'm trying to figure out how to actually make a better plan for the day for myself. And I want to make that public for you too when I'm done. This was a little bit more all over the place. I hope you enjoyed it. If you don't know me, I'm Johannes, and I wish you a wonderful day. See you next time, and take care.